Hello everybody and welcome back to the Virtual Racing Compound Porsche Super Cup. You join myself, Jack Werrell, once again in the commentary box here for round 6 of the championship. We are at Road America now, so past the halfway point in the season, the championship is getting ever closer. We'll check on the points after today's race, so we'll be able to see how they will finish off this week and go into the next round. So in just a few moments' time, we will have the first race underway. The qualifying session is taking place in the background, and this will set the grid for the first 15-minute sprint race of the evening. So race 1 will very shortly be getting underway. Let's have a look to see how they'll line up. It's Nicholas Cacato on pole position, a 2-minute 6.827. Alongside him is Pete Plasto, championship leader. Then we get back to Timothy van der Broek and Remco Barlow. Row 3 of the grid is made up of Joost Skulj and Matt Forrest. Then we get back to Stephen Orrell and newcomer Javier Perna lining up in 8th place. Keep an eye on him. Harry Sherwood somewhat out of his usual position down in 9th place. And Chris Roberts round out your top 10 starters. Then it's Craig Thompson and Matt Sicily. You can hear the revs rising in the background, and very shortly I'm sure we will be getting underway. Craig Thompson has appeared in the background. We're waiting for Remco Barlow. We're waiting for our pole sitter, Nicholas Cacato. So I'm sure we will be getting underway. There is Craig Thompson peering through the gap. Matthew Forrest currently sat there 6th place, eager to get underway. And I'm sure in a few moments' time we will be able to go racing for the first time this evening. So we have the drivers currently sat waiting on the grid. The revs are rising. In a few moments' time, we will go racing for the first time this evening. Nicholas Cacato starting on pole position. Pete Plasto on the outside. We do go racing. We are under green flag conditions. A little bit of contact in the background. It's a good start from Pete Plasto on the outside of the first row of the grid. Remco Barlow already up 1 place and has somewhat secured 3rd. Timothy van der Broek under pressure from Joost Skulj behind. In towards turn 1, the leaders are side by side. Can Pete Plasto go all the way around the outside, get the move done very early on? It'll be the outside for turn 2 once again. Down the hill they plunge. Pete Plasto cutting across the nose of Nicholas Cacato, making sure he is first in towards turn 2. So already position made on towards the first of one of the long straights here at Road America. So Nicholas Cacato will have the draft assistance all the way down. You can see Remco Barlow coming under pressure from Timothy van der Broek behind. Joost Skulj sat there waiting in the wings, side by side once again, this time in towards turn 3, downhill on the brakes. Nicholas Cacato has got his nose in front. Can he sweep around the outside? No, he can't. A little bit of contact potentially between the pair of them. Pete Plasto still in the lead. Now Remco Barlow trying to work his way up the inside of Nicholas Cacato as well. As almost a little bit of contact, but Pete Plasto remains in the lead. Remco Barlow picks up the place. Nicholas Cacato still sat there in 3rd place, albeit under pressure from Timothy van der Broek. We've lost Joost Skulj a little bit further down the order. There is Stephen Orrell up 2 places into 5th. Joost Skulj now down into 6th. Craig Thompson up 4 places from where he started in 7th. And now we get back to Javier Perna. He hasn't lost and hasn't gained any positions, but a lot of damage on the tail end of his Porsche. Then we get back to Matt Sicily and Chris Pio. Matthew Forrest has had an incident early on, I believe. He's down 6 places. Chris Roberts running wide there on the way out of Sector 2 in towards Sector 3, the long right-hander. Lots of damage on the front end of that car, but back up to the leader. You can see Pete Plasto already stretching his legs, slowly starting to pull away in the lead of this race. Remco Barlow sat there in 2nd place, and it's a draft train for you hard on the brakes in towards Canada Corner, but Remco Barlow not too far adrift from our leader as it stands. Nicholas Cacato, he's got work to do after being our pole sitter by quite some margin. I think it was 3/10 clear, almost 4/10 clear on pole. Finding himself in 3rd place before even half the lap was completed was really not ideal for him. Timothy van der Broek sat there in 4th place. He's managed to work his way out of that position, and he's no longer bridging the gap to 5th, so he's got a bit of breathing room. Fastest lap of the race for Pete Plasto, a 2-minute 12.626. Run up towards turn 1. It seems like the draft isn't going to be massively assisting anybody apart from Stephen Orrell in the background. Is he going to work his way up the inside of Joost Skulj? No, not as yet. So they still remain as they are. Pete Plasto leading the way, Remco Barlow 2nd, and Nicholas Cacato in 3rd. So now on to lap 5 of the race we go. Nicholas Cacato still sat there in 3rd place, trying to defend, trying to work forward, pardon me, trying to get past Remco Barlow. That's a big lock up on the brakes and straight in towards the gravel trap. Will he get his stop before the wall? Yes, he does. Have we had an incident as well for Remco Barlow? He's very slow on the exit. There's gravel kicked up, so maybe a mistake from himself as well. That's allowed Joost Skulj to work his way up into 2nd place. Timothy van der Broek now into the podium places. Currently sat there in 3rd place. Remco Barlow trying to get that 3rd place back. Down the straight we go, under the bridge, and then in towards what is in theory, turn 4. A lot of drivers see it as turn 3 on the brakes, downhill, so brake nice and early. Will he get it slowed down? It's a big lock-up on the inside front, so he goes very deep into the corner, very, very briefly in 3rd place, but back up the inside. A good cutback. Timothy van der Broek back up into 3rd place. Remco Barlow down in 4th with a lot of work to do, but up at the front, somewhat safe now, 3.2 seconds clear is Peter Plasto. Good stuff from him so far. There we go, Host Skulj in 3rd, Timothy van der Broek in 3rd. Remco Barlow in 4th, Stephen Orrell now into 5th. Where has that left Nicholas Cacato? Right the way down the order in 7th place. You can see a train of cars behind him, 3 of which are Apex Tech cars. Matt Sisseler, Chris Pio and Ari Sherwood. Newcomer Javier Perna sat there in 3rd place. Damage aboard that car. We'll see whether he can manage that to the end, but with 3 minutes of the race remaining, I've got a feeling it will only get closer. So on towards the final lap of the race now. You can see that Chris Pio is slowly reeling in Javier Perna. He's got the draft assistance all the way down the straight, across the start-finish line. There is the white flag, so on towards the final lap of the race. The Apex Tech car of Chris Pio jumps out towards the left-hand side. Position made. Will his teammate, Ari Sherwood, be able to follow him through? Not in towards turn 1, but if he can get a good run through here, he will be looking towards a top 10. So Javier Perna currently sat there in 10th place on the brakes, comes over to cover off that position. Does he manage to get the apex? No, he doesn't. He washes wide, and that allows Ari Sherwood to sneak his way up the inside. Javier Perna sat there in 11th place. Chris Roberts now trying to work his way past as well. So almost 3 positions lost in the space of 2 corners for Javier Perna. Down the straight we go, and once again, yes, Javier Perna, he's lost out mainly to the draft. Chris Roberts looking to pick up another place on the brakes up the inside of Ari Sherwood. Can he get the move done? Grabs the apex, a little bit of a lock-up, yet more contact between the pair of them. There was an initial bit of contact, and the car of Ari Sherwood spat in towards the front of Chris Roberts, but Chris, the big winner out of all of that, up into 9th place from what was 12th. Chris Pio sat there in 10th place, Javier Perna back up into 11th, Ari Sherwood with that contact now down into 12th place. The final lap of the race, as always, is where the race is somewhat decided, but it seems like before we're even in towards the middle sector of the circuit, everybody's already trying to sort their positions out. A mistake from Stephen Orrell. You can see the tyre tracks through the grass. That may have picked up a slowdown, but dirty tyres, that has meant that his turn-in capabilities have massively been weakened. Chris Roberts swoops all the way around the outside, but towards the final corner for what will be the final time this evening in the sprint race, it's Pete Plasto leading the way. He's massively eased off. 1.4 seconds is that lead margin. No real reason to push through the final corner. Up the hill he will go to take the first win of the evening in the 312 Virtual Racing Compound car, weaving across the line, celebrating that as well deserved. Host Skulj crosses the line to finish in 2nd place. Timothy van der Broek cross the line to round out your podium. Then it's Remco Barlow and Nicholas Cacato recovering to 5th place after starting the race on pole position, hounded to the line by Craig Thompson. Matt Sisseler crosses the line in what is somewhat of a lonely 7th place. Chris Roberts does manage to take 8th place, a good final lap for him from 12th right the way up to 8th in 1 lap. Stephen Orrell in 9th, Chris Pio finishes in 10th, Javier Perna in 11th, and I think Ari Sherwood peeled his way in towards the pit lane. Yes, he did. So he will end up taking the checkered flag in the pit lane, and Matthew Forrest, don't think, making it to the end of the race. So we will get the results up on the screen for you from the first race of the evening. Like we said, Pete Plasto took the first win, 1 second clear of Host Skulj. Timothy van der Broek rounds out your podium. And it's Remco Barlow in 4th, Nicholas Cacato 5th, Craig Thompson in 6th, Matt Sisseler finished in 7th, followed by Chris Roberts, Stephen Orrell and Chris Pio rounding out your top 10. Then it's Javier Perna and Ari Sherwood, the last of the finishers on the lead lap. Matthew Forrest, I don't think, took the checkered flag, and Stuart Jacklin retiring very early on. But that was the first race of the evening. We do have 25 minutes of feature race action on the way. So the drivers gridding up now, waiting patiently for the start of the feature race. You can see Pete Plasto sat a little further back. Of course, this one being the reverse grid race. So the drivers working their way onto the grid. Craig Thompson sat towards the front. You can see Chris Roberts not too far adrift. Ari Sherwood, after finishing in the pit lane, that dropped him right the way towards the tail end of the order. Your pole sitter for the feature race is Chris Pio. Stephen Orrell lining up alongside on the front row of the grid. So we're just waiting for, I think, 2 more drivers. Remco Barlow yet to take to the grid, followed then by Stuart Jacklin. Stuart will line up towards the very tail end of the order. There is Remco Barlow jumping in the background. Are we going to get Stuart Jacklin? I don't think we are. But the revs rising, getting ready to go. A little bit of rolling from Chris Pio. Is that going to get him a penalty? I do believe it will. So our pole sitter losing out very early on, and it's not a very good start to go with that. Chris Roberts gets a blinding start from the inside of the second row. That might manage, he might be able to work his way in towards the first corner in first place. Stephen Orrell on the outside. Cold tyres. They've got to be so careful not to get eager on the first lap of the race. Stephen Orrell, good defence all the way around the outside. Manages to remain in the lead. Who's going to be last of the late breakers in towards turn 2? It will be Stephen Orrell, so he does manage to defend that lead, but then it will be the draft assistance gifted to Chris Roberts all the way down towards turn 3. We've got Craig Thompson in the background with Nicholas Cacato tucked underneath the rear wing. He jumps out towards the left-hand side trying to get the overlap and maybe force his hand up the inside to try and make that work on the brakes. Chris Roberts, is he going to go for a move for the lead? No, he's not. But Nicholas Cacato up into third place. And at the moment, Timothy van der Broek sat there in 5th place. There's contact in the background. Javier Perna, I think, has been caught up in that. We've got Matthew Forrest, Javier Perna, one of the Apex Tech cars. I think that's Host Scudge. And Remco Barlow all caught up in that incident. We'll try and get a look back to see what happened there. But that was 4 cars all pointing the wrong way at turn 3. Remco Barlow's car has got a little bit of damage, and that now is Stephen Orrell off and into the grass. So was there contact? I don't know. Both cars look fairly clean. Here is Chris Roberts still leading the way on an absolute mission through the carousel. Got to be careful not to wash too wide, but that has now meant that Nicholas Cacato up into 2nd place. And it's Timothy VDB sat there in 3rd. Craig Thompson in 4th, Chris Pio now in 5th, Harry Sherwood up into 6th place, Matt Sisseler in 7th, so it's a trio of Apex Tech cars. Then we get back to the recovering Remco Barlow, a little bit of damage on that car, we'll have to be careful how he manages that throughout the race. And it's Pete Plasto sat there in 9th place. I think he massively had to slow down in avoidance of those cars that were off the road. There is Javier Perna. Matthew Forrest, heavy damage on that car, both front and rear, and then he works his way on towards the grass, potentially suspension damage for that car, so it's so unfortunate. I wouldn't be surprised if that car peels in towards the pit lane at the end of this lap. Stephen Orrell recovering, no such damage on that car of note, really. It looks like he will be able to make it round and continue running. Host Skulls, you can even see the suspension damage on that car. Very tricky to keep it in a straight line, so he will be destined for retirement. And Stuart Jacklin, I don't think, took to the grid. No, he didn't. But there is Matthew Forrest. Into the pit lane goes Remco Barlow. Chris Pio follows suit. Matthew Forrest, we see him peel in as well. But at the moment, Chris Roberts in the lead under pressure from Nicholas Cacato. Fastest lap of the race last time through for Nicholas, so 2 minute 12.95 from a standing start. That is a very quick lap indeed. And it's Timothy van der Broek sat there in 3rd place. Not too far adrift, Craig Thompson, and another one of those drivers that has been so consistent. They've just been sat there scoring points consistently week in, week out, and that has stood him in good stead for the championship. We'll have a look at the championship standings at the end of the evening to see where that leaves us, heading in towards what will be round 7 of the championship. But at the moment, Chris Roberts under ever increasing pressure. 3 minutes of the race gone. A little flick of oversteer, I think, over the crest there for our leader. But Chris Roberts, he is sat there defending for his life. It's not too much of an issue if he lets Nicholas Cacato by, as long as he can stick with him. It's a long race, 25 minutes is the feature race. So Chris Roberts not under too much pressure when you think about it. He can afford to let a couple of cars by and just sit on and let them do the heavy lifting, the hard work throughout the race, and then come through and, fingers crossed, take the win towards the end of the race. But Nicholas Cacato is definitely there, making his intentions known, pushing very hard, used all of the exit curb and a little bit more. You can get away with it on the exit of the carousel. You definitely can't get away with it on the exit of the King, because it will spit you into the inside concrete wall. Timothy van der Broek not too far adrift, bridging the gap between 2nd and 4th. But at the moment, that lead gap, I've got a feeling it's only going to get closer. So it's a good run on the exit of turn 2 for Nicholas Cacato. Timothy van der Broek not too far behind. Chris Roberts has got to decide which way to go. There's 2 cars to defend, and he can only really go one way. Does he stay on the inside? Yes, he does. But Nicholas Cacato looking to sweep his way around the outside. Later on the brakes, can he get the move done? Timothy van der Broek trying to follow the same line, see whether he can sweep around the outside, but a bounce over the curb flicked the car away from Chris Roberts. So that meant that Nicholas Cacato couldn't really do much in the way of attack. And somehow, after a couple of spits of flame from the exhaust of Chris Roberts, he remains in the lead. Nicholas Cacato is definitely there and definitely fighting for that lead. And Timothy van der Broek, best seats in the house. He can afford just to sit back and let the two drivers in front battle away, slow each other down, and potentially go through and pick up the pieces. But Chris Roberts still leading the way from Nicholas Cacato and Timothy van der Broek in third. So down the start, finish straight once again to go on to lap 5 of the race. Chris Roberts, he's got to decide which way he's going to go. A very, very sharp move over to the inside from Nicholas Cacato. I think there was a tiny bit of contact with that pit wall, but Chris Roberts so close on the brakes. Can he keep the move or keep the position all the way around the outside? Nicholas Cacato trying to get the move done up the inside. Once again, side by side on the brakes. A flick of, I think that was tyre smoke, maybe a little bit of contact between the pair of them, but Chris Roberts, Nicholas Cacato still side by side. Timothy van der Broek deciding which way he wants to go. He's left with pretty much nowhere to go at this point. He wants to try and follow the quicker driver through. He's just trying to decide who that will be. Nicholas Cacato gets the better run down the straight, so in towards turn 3, downhill on the brakes. In theory, Chris Roberts has got the corner, as he is on the inside, but Nicholas Cacato later on the brakes. He's got a lot more circuit to use on the exit, and around the outside, Nicholas Cacato works his way into the lead, and that means he can continue to work forward with Chris Roberts just in the rear view mirror. Timothy van der Broek, best seats in the house, sitting back and more or less watching that. I'd imagine it is rather frustrating at this point, but it does now mean we do have a new race leader. Chris Roberts the meat in the sandwich, because Timothy van der Broek is still sat there in third place. They've got to be careful not to slow each other too much, because Harry Sherwood sat there in fourth place. Matt Sisseler in fifth, under pressure from Pete Plasto, 2 VRC cars. Pete Plasto and Craig Thompson sat waiting in the wings, trying to work their way by. The differing lines through there, a little blink there from Pete Plasto, but he still continues on in that 6th position. Down the straight once again on the run up towards the kink. It can be quite difficult to follow a car through here with the dirty egg. Pete Plasto knows that, turns in nice and early to try and get some fresh air on that front splitter, get that turn in made, and then down towards Canada Corner. It looks like Pete Plasto might have got the move done later on the brakes. Yes, he has. So Pete Plasto all the way around the outside, up in towards 5th place. Yet more points on the board for Pete, and Craig Thompson not too far adrift either. So after losing 1 place, Matt Sisseler already under pressure from losing another. Nicholas Cacato has worked his way into a bit of clean air, and what has happened to Timothy van der Broek? Sat in the middle of the circuit. Is there contact? Yes, there is. Very, very heavy contact between himself, Craig Thompson, and Matt Sisseler. I think in his eagerness to either get out of the way or get pointing the right way, meant that the other drivers couldn't really read where he was going to go, and that meant there was contact between the pair of them. Completely understand that Timothy van der Broek wants to get going, but you've got to be so careful when there are cars on the way, especially on the exit of a corner, when cars put their foot on the throttle and they're only going to accelerate towards you. Craig Thompson does head in towards the pit lane. Matt Sisseler still sat there in 5th place. I think he might have got away with that one. I'm not quite sure how. There's not too much damage on that car, so I'm not 100% sure how he managed to do that, but he is continuing on, sat there in 5th place. And Nicholas Cacato still under pressure from Chris Roberts, but that does now mean that these two haven't really got a saving grace. There's nobody there to try and distract the other driver. Nicholas will know that, so the only worry Chris Roberts has got is trying to work his way past Nicholas Cacato for the lead. Halfway point in the race now, so still around about 6 laps of the race remaining. The tyres may start to be a worry towards the latter stages of this race. The wear won't be too high, but there are some very fast corners, and the circuit conditions do look rather hot. We will have a look to see whether we can get them up. So the track temperature 27 degrees, nice and cool, so nothing too much to worry about. But with all this battling, and Chris Roberts sat not too far adrift of Nicholas Cacato, it does mean that not only will the car be getting hot, but so will the tyres and the brakes, as you are sat in that dirty air. What can he do on the brakes? Not too much. Got very close. Great trust between these drivers. They are racing door to door, but yet there's been very little contact throughout the entirety of the race. So out of the final corner for the penultimate time, Pete Plasto sat there in 4th place, trying to make it a double podium here this evening, looking to the outside of Harry Sherwood on the run up towards turn 1. I think he might have the position made before he even gets to the braking zone. You can see the white flag being waved in the background. We've had a mistake from Chris Roberts, which has meant he's dropped back from the leader, but Pete Plasto swoops around the outside, grabs the apex up into 3rd place on the final lap of the race. So Pete Plasto on the way for a very good haul of points, winning race 1 of the evening, and looking to get back on the podium and stay there for yet more points to aid his championship. And of course we will have a look at the championship standings at the end of this race, just to see how tonight has affected the championship. But Pete Plasto, after getting in front, has already built up quite a nice 6/10 margin on the final lap of the race. So out of the final corner comes Nicholas Cacato towards the line, and he will take the win for the second race this evening, the feature race, the 25-minute race, the one that in theory counts. Nicholas Cacato crosses the line, takes to the top step of the podium. Chris Roberts, after being there or thereabouts, a couple of mistakes meant that he dropped back into second place. However, he did stay there. Pete Plasto getting that move done on the final lap of the race to make up the podium. And it's Harry Sherwood and Matt Sisseler. Matt Sisseler, once again, a fairly quiet race from him. Obviously, there was the mistake from Timothy van der Broek that meant he had to take some avoiding action, but he did manage to continue on without an issue to finish in 5th place. Remco Barlow, a race of what could have been good recovery drive from him, however, to finish in 6th place. And Javier Perna coming towards the line, rather damaged 7th place. You can see Remco Barlow, I think he's had just about enough this evening, but yeah, more points to add to his tally. Craig Thompson, after heading in towards the pit lane with some very heavy damage after some contact with Timothy van der Broek, finishes in 8th place. Speaking of Timothy VDB, he comes to the line and finishes in 9th. And Ho Skulj on the exit of the final corner will be the last of our finishers. Only 10 finishers here this evening. We have 4 retirees, and obviously we'll see those guys on the results tab. But Ho Skulj crosses the line, which does mean that he makes up the final of the finishes, and we will have the results available to us. So Nicholas Cacato crossed the line to take the win, 3 seconds clear of Chris Roberts, and it was Pete Plasto in 3rd, Harry Sherwood in 4th, Matt Sisseler in 5th, Remco Barlow recovering to 6th, and it's Javier Perna, Craig Thompson, Timothy van der Broek, and Ho Skulj, the last of your finishes. Then we have Stephen Orrell, followed by Chris Pio, Matt Forrest and Stuart Jacklin, all retiring from the race. Stuart Jacklin not taking to the grid very early on. But we do have the championship standings available to us. Let's try and get those up for you. So heading out of this round, in towards round 7 of the championship, we go to Alton Park next time out. Pete Plasto is leading the championship standings on 339 points after this evening. VRC teammate Chris Roberts tied for 2nd place with Nicholas Cacato on 302. Then it's Matthew Forrest in 4th. Not a great night for him, retiring from both races, I believe. However, he is 4th in the championship, 278 points. And it's Remco Barlow in 5th, Chris Pio in 6th, Harry Sherwood in 7th, Ho Skulj in 8th, followed by Timothy van der Broek and Craig Thompson rounding out your top 10 on 153 points. Then we get quite the jump back, a whole 50 points to Stuart Jacklin. You can see 8th and 9th are tied on 156 points, only 3 points back. We do then get to Craig Thompson. And then we get the jump, like I say, the 50 points back to Stuart Jacklin. Matt Sisseler and Stephen Orrell tied for 12th place on 100 points, only 1 point back. We find both Stephen Orrell and Gaston Messeroni on 99 points. And then we get back to Martin de Jong, Cody Steig and Javier Perna on 17 points. So there's some very, very close battles. And we've only got 3 rounds left of the championship, so it's all to play for on the final few rounds. Alton Park next time out. Join myself, Jack Werrell, once again in the commentary box for round 7 of the Virtual Racing Compound Porsche Super Cup.